Texas is huge, 268,000 square miles, bigger than France. Most people only see Austin, Houston, and the Alamo. Past the interstate sit the bones of more than 500 documented ghost towns, the most of any state in America. We're about to walk through 10. A 1912 schoolhouse standing empty in the West Texas dust, its desks still inside. A town that three friends from Frankfurt bought for about $20,000 and turned into a desert film festival. A hill country farming town that lies 30 feet underwater and rises out of the lake whenever Texas hits a serious drought. And at number 1, a Gulf Coast city of 5,000 people that 2 hurricanes erased from the map in 11 years, where the U.S. Army once landed a herd of camels. If you love these forgotten history deep dives, hit subscribe. We do one every week. Today we are counting down 10 Texas ghost towns where, if you believe the listings, you can buy in for less than the price of a used car. The reality is stranger than the headline. Let's go. Number 10. Toyah, the haunted schoolhouse in the dust. About 21 miles southwest of Pecos, just off Interstate 20, sits a town the railroad built and the railroad left. Toyah became a Texas and Pacific Railway Division point in 1881. Its name comes from a Native American word meaning flowing water, after the artesian springs that once sat under it. At its peak in 1910, the population was around 771. Today, a handful of people remain in a town that mostly still stands. What everybody comes to see is the schoolhouse, a 2-story red brick building completed in 1912. Windows shattered, roof partly collapsed. Old desks and chalkboards still arranged inside the empty rooms. A 2004 tornado took out part of the old bank. There was no single villain in Toyah's slow death. No fire, no flood, no closed mine. The town just got bypassed and forgotten. The legend that grew up around the empty school is that children's voices still drift through the halls at night. Stand outside on a windy West Texas evening and you understand exactly how that legend got started. Number 9. Lobo. The ghost town the Germans bought. In 2001, 3 friends from Frankfurt, including a man named Alexander Bardorf, pooled their money and bought an entire West Texas town for about $20,000. That sentence sounds like the setup for a joke. It is not. Lobo sits on roughly 10 acres along US 90, about 130 miles southeast of El Paso. It started as a railway watering stop and grew into a cotton and pecan farming community fed by an aquifer beneath the desert. By the 1980s, agriculture had pumped that aquifer past the point of recovery. In 1991, the last residents packed up and left. For a decade, Lobo was a dead town in the middle of nowhere. Then one of Bardorf's friends drove past in 1999 and noticed a town for sale sign. The Germans wired the money, dug new wells, re-roofed the buildings, and for 20 years turned the property into a bohemian retreat, hosting music events and the Desert Dust Cinema Experimental Film Festival. In April 2023, they listed it again. Asking price was $100,000. The liability waiver that buyers had to sign disclosed open septic holes, rattlesnakes, and Africanized bees. It sold that October to a couple from Corpus Christi, a whole town for the price of a mid-sized sedan. The Germans got there first. Number 8, Medicine Mound, the town the mistress burned. Long before there was a town in Hardman County, there were 4 cone-shaped dolomite hills rising about 350 feet off the prairie. The Comanche and Kiowa held them sacred. Flat-topped, considered the home of healing spirits, used for vision quests and the gathering of medicinal plants. In 1908, the Kansas City, Mexico and Orient Railway extended a line east of those mounds, and white settlers platted a town site and named it after the geology they did not fully understand. By the 1920s, Medicine Mound had about 500 residents, 22 businesses, 3 churches, and a newspaper called The Citizen. Then, in 1932 or 1933, fire tore through Main Street and erased most of the business district. The official cause was never settled. Local oral tradition pinned it on the spurned mistress of a local rancher who came back with a match. The Great Depression finished off whatever the flames had spared. By 1940, only 6 businesses remained and the population had dropped to 210. Here's the detail. After the fire, the Hicks and Cobb General Store was rebuilt using round granite cobblestones hauled in from Oklahoma's Wichita Mountains. The walls are spherical and rough, unlike anything else in Texas. The store still stands, now a small museum. The 4 sacred mounds also still stand, on a private ranch where the Comanche return every year for vision quests. The town came and went in 2 generations. The mounds did not notice. Number 7. Glenrio. The town sliced in half by a state line. Glenrio sits at exit 0 off Interstate 40, the westernmost exit in Texas, and at the same time, the easternmost edge of New Mexico. The town was founded in 1903 as a railroad siding originally called Rock Island, then renamed Glenrio in 1908 from the English Glen and the Spanish Rio, despite having neither a valley nor a river. The state line ran straight through the middle of it. The residents made the most of that. All the gas stations were on the Texas side because New Mexico had higher fuel taxes. All the bars were on the New Mexico side because Deaf Smith County, Texas, was dry. The post office sat in New Mexico. The railroad depot where the mail arrived sat in Texas. A bag of letters had to physically cross state lines to be sorted. By the 1930s, Route 66 had been paved through the middle of town. Glenrio became a mother road waypoint, fueling in Texas, drinking in New Mexico, sleeping in one motel whose sign read First in Texas or Last in Texas, depending on which direction you were heading. Parts of John Ford's 1940 film, The Grapes of Wrath, were shot here. Then in September 1973, Interstate 40 opened a bypass a few hundred yards north. Glenrio went silent within a few years. The historic district was added to the National Register in 2007. 17 contributing structures. The town that built 2 states' worth of vices got skipped by both. Number 6. Aldridge. The sawmill in the jungle. A Forest Service archaeologist named John Ippolito, who excavated the site in 1979, described his first walk into the ruins this way. It was like walking onto a Mayan site in the Central American jungle. He was in East Texas. Aldridge sits inside the Angelina National Forest in Jasper County on a bend of the Neches River. In 1903, a lumberman named Hal Aldridge poured concrete by hand to build 2 massive dry kilns and a powerhouse with floors 4 feet thick. He added ornate rooflines and archways, strange ambition for a sawmill, as if he expected the operation to last centuries. The town around the mill grew to between 1,000 and 1,500 residents, with about 200 company houses, and the mill turned out 125,000 board feet of lumber per day, one of the largest producers in the state. Then it burned. In August 1911, the original wooden mill went up in flames. The Beaumont Journal covered it. Aldridge rebuilt in concrete reinforced with iron beams. It burned again. He rebuilt. It burned again. Eventually, around 1923, he walked away. The railroad spur was pulled up in 1925. The U.S. Forest Service took the site in 1935 and the pine forest closed back over the ruins. To see it today, you hike 3 miles in from Boykin Springs. 3 concrete shells the size of small cathedrals, vine-smothered, graffitied, swallowed by trees. A Mayan ruin 200 miles from Houston. Quick pause. If you are getting something out of this, drop a thumbs up. It really helps the video get seen. And tell us in the comments which of these towns you would actually drive out to. We read every comment. We have covered some odd corners of Texas so far. The 5 remaining entries are darker, bigger, and one of them is a city of 5,000 people that simply does not exist anymore. Number 5. Terlingua, the Quicksilver town that refused to die. Around the turn of the 20th century, a Chicago industrialist named Howard E. Perry took ownership of a remote tract of Chihuahuan desert as payment for a debt. He had not seen the land, he had no plans for it. He only discovered afterward that it sat on one of the richest cinnabar deposits in the country, the red ore from which mercury or quicksilver is extracted. Perry incorporated the Chisos Mining Company in May 1903. Within a few years, it was the largest mercury producer in the United States. he almost never visited. He ran the entire town by daily correspondence from Chicago. The company owned everything: the general store, the doctor, the jail, the theater, the school, the post office, the houses. Mexican workers fleeing the revolution filled the camps. By the World War I quicksilver boom, about 2,000 people lived and worked at the Chisos mines, feeding mercury into American detonators, explosives, and gold processing plants. Then the war ended. Mercury prices collapsed. The ore played out. The 1918 flu came through the camp. The Chisos Mining Company filed for bankruptcy on October 1st, 1942, and by 1943 the town was effectively dead. Here's the wild part. Terlingua refused to stay that way. In the 1960s, drawn by Big Bend tourism and the cheapest real estate in the country, artists and desert hermits moved into the ruins. The Starlight Theater reopened. The trading company reopened in the old Chisos Company store. The chili cook-off started in 1967 and now draws over 10,000 people every November. The Terlingua Cemetery, with its hand-built wooden crosses and stone mound graves of the miners and the 1918 flu dead, is one of the most photographed sites in Texas. It is also still an active cemetery. The town never quite stopped burying its own. Number 4. Helena, the toughest town on earth, and the father who killed it. The Helena duel worked like this. Two men, shirtless, standing in a Texas street, their left hands tied together at the wrist with a strip of buckskin, each holding a knife with a blade exactly 3 inches long, too short to reach a vital organ, just long enough to bleed. The locals stood around them placing bets. The two men slashed at each other until one of them bled to death. That practice is named for the town where, by long tradition, it was invented. Helena sits in Karnes County, about 70 miles southeast of San Antonio. It was founded in 1852 by Thomas Ruckman and Dr. Lewis Owings at a crossroads of old trade routes: the La Bahia Road, the Chihuahua Ox Cart Trail, the wagon roads carrying gold and goods up from the Gulf. Travelers stopped, travelers spent money, bandits followed. By the 1860s, the town was rough enough that Eastern newspapers gave it the nickname that stuck: the toughest town on earth. Then, in 1884, a wealthy local rancher named William G. Butler lost his son in a Helena brawl. Butler told anyone who would listen that he intended to kill the town itself. He had the means to do it. When the San Antonio and Aransas Pass Railway came looking for right-of-way, Butler personally offered them a route across his ranch, miles away from Helena. The railroad accepted. The track bent around the town in a long curve still visible from Highway 181 today, locally called the Big Curve. Within a decade, the county seat had moved to Karnes City. The Helena courthouse became a school. The saloons emptied. Helena was not burned. It was not flooded. It was not buried. One grieving father bypassed it with a railroad, and that was enough. Number 3. Thurber, the barbed wire city of 10,000 strangers. By the early 1920s, a single Texas town between Fort Worth and Abilene held nearly 10,000 people. Miners, brickworkers, families speaking 18 different languages. And the entire town was surrounded by a barbed wire fence, patrolled by armed guards. Thurber was a corporation. When the Johnson brothers found bituminous coal in northwestern Erath County in 1886, they hit something rare in Texas: a coal seam profitable enough to power railroads. By 1888, they had sold to the Texas and Pacific Coal Company. The new owner, Robert Dickey Hunter, watched what was happening in mines in Pennsylvania and Indiana and made a decision. He would build a town the company owned completely: land, houses, schools, churches, a 200-room hotel, a 650-seat opera house, the only library in the county. Then he fenced off 900 acres with barbed wire and posted armed guards at the gates to keep union organizers and outsiders out. Workers were recruited from Italy, Poland, Mexico, and a dozen other countries where American labor organizers could not easily follow. Workers were paid in company scrip redeemable only at company stores. Italians and Poles lived on Hill Number 3, segregated even within their own communities. During Prohibition, the Italians imported grapes from California and made wine. Bricks from Thurber's plant paved the Galveston seawall, Congress Avenue in Austin, and the Fort Worth stockyards. In 1926, when the company demanded wage cuts after the coal market collapsed, the United Mine Workers chartered 2 railroad cars and sent 162 Mexican miners home to Mexico, rather than have them break the strike. A similar number of Italians went back to Italy at the same time. Better to cross an ocean than scab. Through the 1930s, the company dismantled Thurber building by building. By 1938, almost nothing remained but a smokestack on the side of what is now Interstate 20. The smokestack is still there. The headstones in the old cemetery are still in 18 languages. Number 2. Bluffton, the town that comes back when it doesn't rain. The town of Bluffton sits at the bottom of Lake Buchanan, about 30 feet down. It was settled in 1852 by Billy Davis on the west bank of the Colorado River in what is now Llano County. A relative named I.B. Maxwell joined him a year later and named the place after his hometown of Bluffton, Arkansas. By 1883, the town had a blacksmith, a cotton gin, a hotel, saloons, and a post office. A fire allegedly started by drunken cowboys destroyed it that same year, and the residents rebuilt half a mile north. For roughly 50 years, it was a quiet hill country farming town. Pecan orchards, cotton fields, a baseball team called the Bluffton Eagles, about 50 families plus another 40 in the surrounding valley. Then, in 1931, the New Deal-era Lower Colorado River Authority started building Buchanan Dam, at the time the longest multiple-arch dam in the country, to tame the Colorado and bring electricity to the hill country. The agency bought out every family in Bluffton. They also paid morticians to exhume about 100 graves from the cemetery before the flooding began. There is a photograph in the 101 Highland Lakes archive of 2 morticians at work in the old Bluffton Cemetery. A small child's casket visible on the ground at their feet. Engineers estimated the lake would take 4 years to fill. Heavy rains filled it in months. Here's the part that stops people cold. Old Bluffton is not entirely gone. During severe droughts, 1984, 2009, and again from 2011 through 2014, the water drops 20 or 30 feet and the town comes back. Stone foundations, the cotton gin slab, the hotel walls, rusting iron tools. Grave-shaped depressions in the dried lake bed where graves were missed during the exhumation. In 2009, the Texas Historical Commission excavated the exposed town site. When the rains return, Lake Buchanan covers everything again. Bluffton is the only ghost town in Texas you have to wait for a drought to visit. Number 1. Indianola, the queen that drowned twice. Drive south from Port Lavaca on State Highway 316 and the road eventually runs out. Marsh stretches in every direction. Cordgrass, pelicans flapping over the brown water of Matagorda Bay. The horizon shimmers in the heat. There is no traffic. The wind off the Gulf is constant and tastes like salt. At the end of the road, where the asphalt meets the bay, you find 3 things standing in the tall grass. A fragment of an old stone courthouse, a statue of a French explorer named La Salle, and a silhouette of a camel. Nothing else is there. What is under the water in front of you used to be the second largest city in Texas. Indianola was founded in August 1846 by Sam Addison White and William M. Cook as Indian Point. Renamed Indianola in February 1849. Calhoun County seat from 1852 to 1886. Terminus for Charles Morgan's New York steamship line. The deep water port through which thousands of German, Polish, and Czech immigrants entered the state, including the families who would found New Braunfels and Fredericksburg. In 1856 and 1857, the U.S. Army landed 2 shiploads of camels here for Secretary of War Jefferson Davis's experiment in desert military transport. The experiment failed. Stray camels were seen roaming the marshes around the bay for years. In July 1869, the world's first shipment of mechanically refrigerated beef left Indianola for New Orleans aboard a Morgan steamship. By 1875, the city had over 5,000 residents. On September 16th of that year, a hurricane with winds estimated at 110 miles per hour hit head-on. The storm surge buried the city. Between 150 and 300 people died. The local district attorney's telegram for federal help read in part, "We are destitute and our town is gone." They rebuilt. Smaller, more cautious. 11 years later, on August 20th, 1886, a Category 4 hurricane, possibly the most powerful storm to hit the United States up to that point, made landfall directly on Indianola. Pressure at landfall was estimated at 925 millibars. Winds of about 150 miles per hour. A storm surge between 13 and 18 feet. 2 houses survived. A fire followed and consumed what was left. By 1887, the survivors had dismantled what they could and shipped it to Victoria and Cuero, where some of those buildings are still in use. The county seat was moved. The port shifted permanently to Galveston. 15 years after Indianola was erased, Galveston ignored the warning, did not finish its seawall in time, and lost roughly 8,000 people in the 1900 hurricane. At very low tide, the foundation of the old Indianola courthouse is still visible above the water in Matagorda Bay. 5,000 people, 2 storms, a camel silhouette in the grass, and a city that nobody outside Texas remembers ever existed. Texas has more documented ghost towns than any state in America, more than 500, and each one of them came from a specific decision, a specific bad year, or a specific storm. For me, the one that stays with me is Bluffton, a whole farming town with graves that the lake never quite covered. Which of these would you actually drive out to? Let us know in the comments, and if you want more forgotten history deep dives like this one, subscribe.